And I'm probably biased because this is my area, but I think there's no more important factor in child health and no more important issue for kids today than childhood obesity. This is a huge public health issue, and we've seen some recent data that's encouraging, but we're not out of the woods yet. So I'm going to start with some statistics and some trends we've been seeing. I think a lot of you are familiar with these, but I think it helps sometimes to see the actual numbers. It's kind of startling when you actually look at the numbers and what's going on. I'm going to talk to you about some research-based approaches. Of course, I'm a scientist, that's what I do. And then I really want to get practical, so practical applications. So what can we do? What can you do? First of all, I want to get a sense of who's here. How many of you are classroom teachers? Okay, phys ed instructors. Anyone here from school food service? Okay. What up? Who else is there? Administrator?
Administrator, we have a nurse.
Nurse, okay, great. Okay, so it's mixed, okay. I like to know who I'm talking to. So practical applications, I think for all of you, I think we'll cover all the bases. So here's the national trends, and this is from going back to 1963. This is a national health survey that in the first iteration was 1971, they actually added a nutrition component. So since 1971, we've been tracking national health trends and also looking at people's nutrition behaviors. And this is it's a kind of a cool survey. It's a mobile survey. They drive around with these big vans and trailers, and they set up camp in different areas of the country for a period of a few months. And actually last spring, they were in Saratoga County. So we have some local data that's now being represented nationally. And they look at things like obesity rates for adults and for children. And they also look at now this nutrition piece. And so we have really good data that correlates nutrition, so what people are eating and what their health outcomes are and how that impacts their body weight. So you can see the trends here. This is the data that's getting the most recent attention. This was about a week ago, this statistic came out. And the headlines are that we've seen a more than 40% decrease in childhood obesity. So this is the kind of the big news. We're declining. Childhood obesity is kind of going away. It's what we're doing is working now, but I really want to point out, and not all of the news organizations really got it right. This is for the 2 to 5 year old set that statistic is for. So we saw from a 12.1 to an 8.4 percentage drop in obesity for 2 to 5 year olds. This is the preschool set that we're seeing, which is awesome. It's very encouraging. We've had a lot of intensive focus on that preschool, especially child care centers, getting kids moving more, changing what we're offering as far as snacks and lunches in the child care centers. Physicians are picking up on that. Childhood obesity isn't just something we're looking at in the adolescents. This starts really early, and actually it starts earlier than this, according to a lot of data. But so that's really when you're hearing that that in the news, that's what they're talking about. So you look at the 6 to 11 year olds. The data hasn't really changed for them. 12 to 19 year olds, again, there's a slight increase. So, and again, this is just one data point. So this is coming out every year or so. We get this new data. So we don't know yet whether this is a true decline or just kind of a blip in the data. We're hoping it's a true trend that we're going to be seeing going forward, because that will have ripple effects. But overall, national trends, so they've doubled since this survey started being conducted. In the 2 to 5 year old set, quadrupled in the 6 to 11 year olds. This is really where we've seen the huge jump. And then tripled in the 12 to 19 year old range. So this is still a big problem. And this is just obesity too. So if you're thinking about overweight and obesity, lower end of the spectrum too, you basically double all these numbers pretty much. And that's the rates we're looking at right now. So it's a huge issue still. And this is local data. I just thought this might be of interest to you. So national average is around 33% overweight or obese. So we have some districts that are below the national average. So Shen here, 23.7. Saratoga Springs School District's 24.2. But we have some that are far above the median or the mean for the country. So Waterville here, 50.9%, which is really startling. Albany here, 40.7. I have Hose. Lansingburg. Yes, very, very high rates here. So these are above the national average for overweight and obesity. And to some degree, this follows kind of, you look at Saratoga Springs, Shenandoah, Niskayuna, that's where you see the lower rates. So it's partially driven by socioeconomic status. So lower income communities tend to have higher rates. Higher income communities where there's more resources tend to have lower rates. Good question?
I work in the nurse's office, and the thing that it's clear that it's just such a low income, so many, I mean, their nutritional status is just horrible.
Yes.
You know, they eat hot dogs for dinner.
And you know what?
4 nights a week. Yeah.
It's a problem. And I was actually, it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition because, you know, you talk about the ideal diet. We pretty much know what an ideal, you know, Paul just shared a lot about what an ideal diet would look like. You go into these low-income communities, and I met with a group of 60 food pantry directors yesterday to talk about improving the health of what they're offering in the community. And they said, A, people won't take beans. B, they don't want whole grain bread, they want white bread. So if we buy whole grain bread and we have it in the pantries, no one takes it. They go away with nothing versus eating beans and eating whole grains. You know, so there's an issue here. And then so that's kind of the lowest end of the spectrum where they're going into food pantries to supplement. But even kind of a couple steps up socioeconomically, what's cheap is not, well, dried beans, you can make an argument for that, but no one knows how to cook dried beans. But whole grain breads are more expensive. They're worried about waste. There's a budget. So fresh fruits and vegetables, there's waste there. They go bad. Canned, processed foods are just more economical. They just make sense. So it's complicated. You can't just say, well, just change and do these behaviors, and that'll solve the problem. So I think my overall message today is it's complicated, but it's also simple, and I hope to give you very concrete, simple kind of takeaways that you can then implement wherever you are, whatever school district you're in. Even, I mean, this is not, I live in Saratoga, so this is what considered being, that's not good. It's lower than, it's better than Waterloo, but it's still, it's kind of like getting a D on an exam instead of an F, right? So it's an across the board, and obesity doesn't discriminate. It's across every socioeconomic group, every race, ethnicity. It just disproportionately affects some groups, but no one is immune. So the physiological consequences of obesity. This isn't just something kind of just, baby fat, they'll grow out of it, it's something that'll go away. Actually, we have really good evidence that it doesn't go away. So especially the younger it starts, in those 2, 3, 4-year-olds who are starting to look at the overweight and obese range, if nothing is done at that early age, they are going to be obese in high school. And they're not going to probably lose weight at that point, because these are now entrenched behaviors. And they're looking at things like diabetes, type 2 diabetes at an early age. But this is a diagram that just shows you, and the reference got left off. This is Kara Ebeling and David Ludwig, a diagram that I pulled from one of their papers. But literally from head to toe, obesity affects a child. So you have things like, in every organ system as well, every organ system is involved. From the neurological system, you have things like depression, eating disorders, which we'll hear about later, poor self-esteem. Some of the symptoms of obesity are actually reinforcing. So if you look at sleep apnea, we talked about sleep quality, I'll talk a little bit more about it in a bit. Obesity leads to sleep apnea. Sleep apnea obviously leads to poor quality sleep. Poor quality sleep leads to obesity. It actually changes your physiology. When you don't get enough sleep chronically, it changes your physiology. It changes your hormone levels. So there's specific hormones in the body that actually help with satiety, help with energy expenditure, and everything. Basically, your satiety hormones are suppressed when you don't get enough sleep. How many of you, when you don't get enough sleep, you're hungry and you crave carbohydrates? Do you find that? So your hormones that tell you you're done, you've had enough calories for the day, are suppressed. And the hormones that tell you seek food, eat more, the craving hormones are actually elevated. So everything is flipped from what it should be. So chronically, you can see if this happens over a long period of time, you're going to take in too many calories and you're going to gain weight over that time. So that's kind of reinforcing asthma and exercise intolerance. Obviously, one of the things we want these overweight kids to do is move more, right? Exercise. It becomes very, very hard for them to do that. The things that concern me the most are this chronic inflammation that we're seeing at very young ages. We know now that chronic inflammation underlies almost every chronic disease. Start with inflammation, it leads to disease later in life. And then this type 2 diabetes. Diabetes is a progressive disease, so it gets worse over time. Even if it's well controlled, it gets worse over time. So we're looking at, if you're getting type 2 diabetes in elementary school, pretty much can guarantee you're going to have amputations in your lifetime if nothing's done. You're probably going to go blind. There's going to be neurological damage in your retina and in your eyes. There's a whole cascade of other physiological, it's not just, oh, diabetes, have to take insulin, you can control it. This is a really, really serious disease in adulthood. When this starts in childhood, the stakes are just even higher. The consequences are much more severe. So this is no joke. This is something we really have to deal with, both from an individual kind of standpoint and from a societal standpoint. We can't afford this. This is also the most, by the way, expensive disease to treat from a health societal cost standpoint. So, like I said, it's a complicated issue, but it's also simple. Really, it's an imbalance in energy. So if you take in more calories than you expend, you will gain weight. If you expend more calories than you take in, you will lose weight every time. It's the law of thermodynamics. Each side of this energy equation there's nuances in there. It's complicated. So there are probably things that you can eat, such as protein, that help you take in fewer calories, keep you more satisfied, interact with your physiology in a way that makes it easier. Energy expenditure, there's nuances in this side of the equation too, but at a basic level, I think we get too caught up in the details and we make it so complicated and then nothing happens and people are confused. What are we supposed to tell people? How much exercise? What are we supposed to eat? Wait, what? We really need to get down to the basics. It's energy balance. So let's simplify it, call it what it is, and try to balance this equation for kids. So energy in, so some societal changes that have happened to kind of tip this energy balance equation towards more energy in, less energy out. So low-cost, energy-dense foods everywhere, increased portion sizes, food advertising, sugar-sweetened beverage consumption, just to name a few. Energy expenditure decreasing, multimedia saturation. Kids are in front of a screen of one form or another pretty much all day. PE and recess cuts, and less activity within PE and recess, declines in physical activity across the board, so even when they're getting home in the communities, there's a number of reasons why leisure time physical activity has declined, and then the changing built environment. So the way, it's kind of this suburbia that we've created that Paul mentioned. We don't have sidewalks like we used to. You can't really walk to the store. How many of you live in a community where you can walk to the grocery store, walk to the mall? Just no one, right? So that used to be kind of how communities were structured, and there's a kind of a movement to get back to that. But I live in a community where it's safe to walk and for the kids to go out and play, but I can't walk to a grocery store. Well, I could, it would take me all day. That's the only thing I did that day. And I wouldn't be able to carry much back.
Right.
But so there's kind of a lot of factors on each side of the energy equation environmentally that we can look at and perhaps change to get this equation more in balance. So child weight status, that's what we're interested in changing. So, what do all these have in common? They're kind of behavioral components of each of these, right? So we look at child weight status, the most proximal behaviors that are going to impact child weight status are what they eat, what they put in their mouth, and how much physical activity they're getting, right? So we look at the most proximal behaviors, dietary intake, physical activity, and actually sedentary behavior. It's not just the opposite of the point of physical activity. There's really good data now that shows even if a child is physically active a couple times a week, if then the rest of their time they're sitting in front of the TV or playing video games and they're very sedentary, that is an independent risk factor for obesity and increasing risk for chronic disease. So, going to soccer practice and then spending the rest of the night watching TV and spending Saturday playing video games, that child is probably still more at risk, even though they do soccer, than a child who doesn't do organized sports, but is kind of maybe outside playing, not watching TV. So two different factors there. Ethnicity does play a role, as does socioeconomic status, age to some degree, and then family history, and by this I kind of mean genetics. You can't ignore that, and I teach a whole class and we talk a whole semester on the genetic factors that are involved here, but again, we don't really need to get caught up in that. Really, let's simplify the message and look at it, because we can't change a child's genetics. So what else can we do? What can we impact? So these are the behaviors we're trying to impact, but these behaviors don't happen in a vacuum, right? There's influences on these behaviors, and the closest influences are in the home. So you have the parents' diet. You're not off the hook, right? Role modeling is really important. They don't do as you say, they do as you do, right? Parents' weight, again, the genetic factors there. Household rules around physical activity, TV watching, eating, snack rules, parenting styles, different family characteristics. So we have to also consider the home, because all of these factors trickle down and affect that sedentary, physical activity, and dietary behavior that then impact the child weight status. So if we can build a supportive environment in the home for changing these behaviors, we're going to have more success than just telling the child, they go to the pediatrician, they get a diagnosis, your child is overweight, here's some things you can do. And they go back in the home, and what's in the pantry? And do mom and dad sit in front of the TV and eat dinner? What's going on in the home? So that's the home, that's the most proximal influence, but then there's school, right? They only spend about half their time at home. They spend about 50% of their time in school. So you can't ignore the factors in school. So what's being done in school? So classroom policies around snacking, the school lunch program obviously has a huge impact, and school breakfast program as well in some schools. PE and recess time, any forms of nutrition or health education, health marketing, nutrition marketing, kind of what messages are being sent to the kids in school. You have a captive audience, you have time. You don't have a lot of time, but if you can build that in somehow, so it's just kind of creating a culture of health and nutrition and well-being and physical activity, and we take care of ourselves. And then to some degree after school too. Some after school programs are tied to schools, but those are the two environments the kids spend a significant amount of time. We can't ignore those. And then the kind of the macro level environment. We look at policy, we look at community characteristics, food availability in the community. So we talked about different communities have more access to grocery stores and lower cost grocery stores. Some communities it's a corner store where you're getting your food. What's available at that corner store. If you're telling the kids, go eat more fruits and vegetables, they go to the corner store and there's a bag of frozen peas that's been thawed and refrozen several times and some really overripe bananas. Not really appealing. So we have to take that into account. Neighborhood crime rates. We're telling kids, go out and play, be more physically active. Some communities it's not safe to do that. And then recreation availability. So are there parks, are there green spaces, are there sidewalks where we can just build that into our day? Exercise, we talk about physical activity, we don't necessarily mean exercise. You don't have to get on a treadmill, you don't have to be lifting weights, just moving if you're a kid. Moving and kind of playing. It can be physically active, so it doesn't have to be structured. And then the media environment too. So this is kind of, from the macro level, kind of filters down and it affects those behaviors that impact child weight status. So we can't just look at one factor. We can't just say, well, it's the school's responsibility, kids spend most of their day there, schools have to do something. We can't just say it's the home, because you can have the best of intentions as a parent, but you send your kid out into the wide world here, and they're exposed to marketing, they're exposed to cheap, readily accessible fast food and highly calorie-dense foods. That can do a lot of damage, even if your intentions are good here. So we have to look at every level. And obviously this is more complicated too. These levels can interact and there's feedback mechanisms built in here, but I think this is a good place to start. So the Institute of Medicine put out a report a while ago looking at, the title of the report was Accelerating Progress on Obesity, Preventing Obesity. So they had these 5 essential areas that need improvement. So obviously physical activity, just finding ways that we can just naturally have more activity built into our day. So active commuting, things like that. Foods and beverages, obviously, so we're consuming, Paul showed this slide, just more calories in general. Across the board, all of us are consuming more calories as a society. More fast food. So these you pack a lot of calories into a really small package, and it's not often a very satisfying package, so you don't realize that you're consuming 1,000 calories at a sitting. It kind of goes down easy. And then sugar-sweetened beverage, and this is a big one for me. So 20% of the increase in the past kind of 3 decades of this obesity epidemic, 20% of that increase in weight is attributed directly to sugar-sweetened beverages. So we're drinking calories. So people ask me all the time, kind of what's the most important thing here? What's the one thing you can do? And if I'm being professional, I say, well, there's no one thing. It's multifactorial. If I'm in a weak moment, I say, just stop drinking soda. Don't give your kids soda. 2-year-olds should not have soda. And this happens. Soda in bottles is something that happens in baby bottles. It should not be. Really, there's some evidence that liquid calories don't register the same in the brain as solid calories. So if you're drinking your calories, you might not be compensating for that 200 calories of sipping on some toast here. I think everybody's drinking water. That 200 calories that you just kind of threw down, you're not going to compensate for that later. Whereas if it was 200 calories of maybe a granola bar or something with some fiber or some substance, you would compensate that. But you wouldn't go over your calorie limit for the day. Marketing, this gets at screen time too. Just these constant messages to consume more, consume more, consume more. We're not getting messages, eat more fruits and vegetables, exercise more. It's slowly working in, but the bulk of the messages are to consume more. Healthcare and workplace, this is the focus of my current research. I'm looking at primary care facilities, pediatric facilities, and kind of using them as the hub of messaging and kind of community outreach. But they're an important part too, so doing some training with them. And then schools. So half of the waking hours for kids are spent in schools, and there's a lot of factors that can possibly be targeted in the school environment. And the IOM this is just another part of the report. Strength in schools is the heart of health, the heart of the community. This can be kind of the central place where they are, like Paul said, they listen more to their teachers and their coaches and the people in school than they do to their parents necessarily. So even though the home is that closest concentric circle, school has a huge impact. And then I like this schematic of just everything, the community as a whole being consistent and flowing together, and the different factors working together to all try to solve this. Because it's factors across the board that have created the problem, and it needs to be several factors together that are going to solve it. So where do we start? So applying the science, the research, right? So we call it the evidence. So what's the evidence? What works? What should we be doing? Using consistent messaging. We'll talk about that. And then building environmental support. So looking at all of those, each of those concentric circles around that core behavior, what can we do at every level? So evidence-based strategies. So there's really good evidence now. This is kind of the best of our knowledge, 30 years of research that we've been doing this. So these are kind of the core behaviors that we should be increasing. One of them is breastfeeding rates, which you probably don't have much of an impact on. But fruits and vegetables, increasing fruit and vegetable consumption. And no one of these alone is going to solve the problem. It's kind of a collective group of behaviors that we need to be promoting. Family meals. Family meals not only decrease risk for obesity and disease, but also decrease drug use and teen pregnancy rates. There's a lot of impact of just having meals together as a family as often as possible. Moderate to vigorous physical activity. So the recommendations for kids, 60 minutes a day of moderate to vigorous physical activity. If you can do more, kind of follow Paul's program and do some more interval training and things like that, that would definitely benefit, but this is kind of the minimum. Kids need to be up and moving at a moderate pace for 60 minutes a day, at least an hour every single day. Sleep, also important. So you can see for the different age groups. And this is also, there's evidence that sleep is declining in kids. So calories going up, sleep is declining. They're probably related to some degree. So, the preschool age, 12 hours in a 24-hour period, 11 hours, 10 hours, 8.5 hours for the 12 plus set. I tried to tell my 2-year-old, Evan said she should get 12 hours. He doesn't care. TV and then behaviors to decrease. So TV and screen time. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends less than or equal to 2 hours per day. Kids age 2 and younger, 0 hours per day. So kids under the age of 2 shouldn't have any screen time. At 2 and up should be less than 2 hours a day. The less, the better. But 2 hours is kind of that critical point, no more than that. And that's based on, we know that kids who have 2 or greater hours a day of screen time have higher rates of obesity. You can look at the numbers and you can see where that trends. Not having TV in kids' bedrooms. And this is very common now, but there is a really close association with having a TV in your bedroom and having a higher rate of obesity. And one of the factors leads back to poor sleep quality. So they're watching TV instead of sleeping, they're not sleeping as many hours as they should, and then the sugar-sweetened beverage consumption. So collectively, there's other things you can do, but collectively, these are the core evidence-based behaviors that we need to be promoting. And it's pretty simple, right? This is very scientific. We have 30 years of research that go into kind of picking out these specific behaviors. But we can't, we're having a hard time getting just this simple message across. And I think this is really funny. So this is, look at the date on this, if you can see it. This is March 9th, 1927. This is the school health report card. Can you imagine? So they sent this home and they looked at, so this child was considered underweight. This was, so they had the weight check-in they did in the back, but they gave health recommendations. So this is almost 90 years ago, right? Let's see what's changed since then with all this new research that we've been doing. So sleep 10 hours every night with the windows open. Brush your teeth before going to bed, before going to school. Eat 3 times a day, chewing slowly. I think that's interesting. Fruits and vegetables other than potatoes, which is by far eclipses every other vegetable. This is the #1 vegetable kids consume, mostly in the fried form. So this is good advice too. Not that potatoes are bad. You know, in their whole form, they're packed with nutrients, but we should be getting other fruits and vegetables in the diet. 2 glasses of milk and 4 glasses of water a day. Never drink coffee or tea, which is, I think is interesting too with the energy drink trend among especially adolescents. Have a bowel movement at the same time every day. That's interesting. Can you imagine if we could try to give this advice to kids now? The whole when the BMI report card thing was so controversial. Enter vigorously into the daily morning health. So it looks like they're doing some sorts of physical activity before class every day. Revolutionary, right? Can you know, if we just did that, you know, even a half hour, so that's half the activity they need to get for the day. And one complete bathroom. So really, it hasn't changed all that much in 90 years, and yet we still can't get people to do these things. So, you know, what's wrong? So, I'm a scientist. I want to look at the evidence. What's evidence-based? So this is an evidence-based program that was started in Maine, a group of researchers in Maine, and they basically took those evidence-based behaviors I showed you and boiled them down into 4. Just remember 4. This is the 5-2-1-0. Anyone heard of this program? It's been around for a while now, but there's really good evidence that, first of all, so 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables every day, 2 or less hours of recreational screen time, 1 hour or more of physical activity, 0 sugary drinks, and then there's also this more water, low-fat milk that's sometimes added to it. And we can't help but say, keep the TV out of the bedroom, you know, screen time under the age of 2. But basically 4 things that parents have to remember, and that kids can get reinforced in the physician's office, in school, in the home. This is easy to remember, and there's really good evidence that shows parents across the education spectrum, across the socioeconomic spectrum, can remember these 4 things. So again, I think we overcomplicate it. Parents are confused. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to feed my child. 5-2-1-0. So this is what we're employing in the research I'm doing right now with the pediatric offices. Just giving this reinforcing message at the doctors. We're sending home some materials. We're trying to get it into the community. So wherever they go in the community, they're being supported with this message. Obviously, in a perfect world, we would add more things to this. I would love to add family dinner to this. But keep it simple, because what we've been doing hasn't worked, right? So 5-2-1-0, let's go. So core principles are environmental policy change influences behavior change. So don't just tell kids what to do. You build a supportive environment around them, consistent messaging. Because that's you know, think about marketing and advertising. What do? Think about soda and candy and sugary cereals. It's a consistent message. You know, silly rabbit, right? You know, have it your way. Name some. You know, the little jingles. It's consistent messaging. They hit them again and again and again, and it sticks. And all of us can show some examples of this. So kind of using that in a good way, kind of harnessing that, because advertisers spend millions of dollars because it works. It changes behavior. It gets people to buy their products and consume the foods they're trying to promote. So let's use what works. Consistent messaging, interconnectivity across settings. So not just the home, not just the school, not just the doctor that's telling them what to do. Everyone's got kind of on the same board and giving a consistent message. And evidence-based. We don't want to do anything that's not backed up with research. We want to know what works. So where I'm working right now is healthcare. We're trying to make community connections and connect to community resources in that capacity. So another part of this picture is schools and the after-school setting, early childhood programs for that 2 to 5-year-old set. This is where it looks like we're having the most success right now. And then the workplace eventually. So here are some examples of the project I'm working on, just in the waiting room. So kind of giving these messages on sugar consumption. So I think this is cool. They took oatmeal and different cereals, and they taped sugar packets to them to show how much sugar is in each of these products that often have kind of a healthy halo. You think oatmeal across the board is good for you, right? So some of these products, it's not steel cut oats. It's kind of a little bit of oatmeal with a lot of sugar and added flavorings to it. And you know, the sugar is kind of sometimes lurking where you don't expect it. And a lot of foods do have that healthy halo, like yogurt. Yogurt's a good food. It can be good, but there's a lot of yogurt that it's packed with sugar. Not all yogurt is created equal. I actually found this out the hard way. My daughter, who loves yogurt, they have snacks at school, and you can kind of say what snacks they can have. And then one of the snacks was yogurt. And I was like, of course she can have yogurt. And she came home from school one day with this stain on her shirt that I could not get out. And I'm pretty good at stain removal. And I couldn't figure out what it was. So I was like, what is this? They're like, oh, that's the yogurt, the Trix yogurt that they have. And I was like, literally, I've tried everything. I cannot get that stain out. Can you imagine? So my daughter's consuming that. And I looked at the sugar next to it. I said, no more yogurt. But that's not. You go to Stonyfield, plain yogurt is not the same as some of the other yogurts. So. And these kind of BMI charts, when I say BMI, everyone understands what that means. Okay. I have some non-nutrition students that are starting to take my graduate classes, and I had one of them come up to me the other day and say, what the heck is BMI? So I don't want to assume, so body mass index, it's weight corrected for height. So it's kind of a better, and it's a really good proxy measure for body fat. It's not a direct measure of body fat, but it's a good correlation for most people, unless you're a competitive athlete. Then it kind of breaks down. But for most people, they're pretty good. So community resource integration. So we had here some ShopRite dietitians. Most grocery stores now have resources for nutrition. And so ShopRite is on board with this 5210 program that we're doing. So they go to their doctor, they get this 5210 message. They recommend you go to the grocery store. They go to the grocery store. There's a dietitian there to help them. They know what the doctor has told them. They're going to help the family then make healthy choices. We have some, working on getting joint use agreements in communities for just active free time. So there's a building that's not being used. Can we open it up in the evenings where kids can just come and be physically active, even without equipment, just kind of run around, maybe play basketball. And things like the Veggie Mobile, the Capital District Community Gardens, where they're providing very low-cost fruits and vegetables. They have this mobile this truck, Veggie Mobile, that goes around to low-income neighborhoods and delivers fresh fruits and vegetables at cost. It's very, very low cost in these communities, and the produce is awesome. And they just, anyone familiar with Capital District Community Gardens? They have a new grow center that they just opened up in Troy, where they're actually going to be, it's a massive facility. They're going to be growing their more fruits and vegetables kind of year-round now. So there's a lot going on in the community. So it's kind of making the connections and kind of spreading awareness. So what can schools do? So this is an example of a bulletin board in a school, promoting obviously the 5210 messaging. It doesn't have to be 5210. It'd be great if it was, because this is evidence-based. We want to do everything that's kind of based in science. But so consistent messaging. Health and nutrition promotion wherever feasible. So if you teach a health class, make sure that messaging is kind of consistent, evidence-based, and maybe being used in a way that's kind of exposing the broader school community to it. Things like bulletin boards are great. Having wellness policies, things like snacking policies. How many of you have wellness policies? It's kind of, you have to have a wellness policy now. Yeah. How many of you do anything with it? It's in place, but okay, good. So some schools, some schools are more progressive with it. They're actually, it's an active living document that they're actually implementing. In some schools, it's just, okay, it's on paper, we have it. So really making that, kind of taking that, something you have to have anyway, and using it. And then role modeling, obviously, is a big one. And connections to those community resources, like I mentioned. So where are we seeing success? So this is kind of, sounds great, pie in the sky. Does this really work? So this was a program that I was lucky enough to be involved in when I was a graduate student. Anyone heard of Shape Up Somerville? Okay, that's new. So this was a program out of Tufts University, and they looked at 3 communities. They looked at Somerville, Massachusetts, and they looked at 2 control communities, Everett and Brockton, Massachusetts. So these are pretty much low-income, high ethnic, racial minority populations, some immigrant populations. So this is the types of communities where the obesity rates are the highest. So this program, the whole point of the program, again, this is taking a very complicated issue and boiling it down simple, was to increase energy expenditure in the kids in this community by 125 calories per day. And why 125 calories? This was the approximate estimation of how much excess calories per day was driving this kind of overtime weight gain. So the obesity epidemic, we now know it's closer to 150 calories, but at the time it was 125 was the target. Just 125 extra calories per day, which is like, what, a granola bar? Not a lot. 1 sugar sweetened beverage, was causing that weight gain over time. So let's just look at bringing kids into energy balance by increasing their expenditure and having them have healthy diets. So they looked at, okay, where can we, in all these concentric circles around the child's behavior that are driving that weight status, where can we intervene? So they looked at before school, in school, after school, and then in the community. So at home it was promoting walking to school, which is not feasible in a lot of communities, but in this community was. So you can walk to school, let's walk to school. Healthier breakfast at home, so giving parents education and tips around that. Education on portion sizes. Before school programs, the breakfast, changes in the breakfast offerings, higher fiber, lower sugar and fat. Portion sizes, again, having fresh fruits available. In the classrooms, in school time, physical activity, more equipment for recess, so recess can be more active, and phys ed classes can be more active. Healthier school lunch, so increasing fiber, decreasing fat and sugar again, more fresh fruits and vegetables, looking at the a la carte items, so the stuff you can get other than the school lunch, like the ice cream and the chips, that are pretty popular, and just changing those, swapping those out for healthier alternatives. So instead of potato chips, we're going to have some whole grain, maybe some baked potato chips, or some whole grain pretzels or something like that, or low-fat yogurt. New food service equipment, changing the menu offerings, working with the food service to have healthier offerings. Classroom micro units for physical activity, we call them the cool moves. So we get up and for 10 minutes just move in place at their desks. And this helps with learning too. Kids I don't like to sit still. I'm like Paul, I'm a fidgeter. I drive people crazy. But kids, they're not built to kind of sit still. So having them get up and just expend some energy for just 10 minutes, it doesn't take out too much of the day. Healthier fundraising, so instead of having bake sales, let's have some alternatives to those bake sales. Professional development for the teachers, administrators, food service staff, PE teachers, school nurses across the board. So everyone was getting consistent messaging, everyone was on board. After school programs, looking at really more intensive nutrition and physical activity education because you have time there. The school day, it's hard to fit in any more in the school day, but after school you have more time and flexibility. Walking safe routes home from schools, improving the snack offerings after school. And in the community, so parent newsletters, coupons, they sent home those BMI report cards, they call them growth reports. Reducing screen time, promotional gifts for meeting kind of objectives along the way, and the community. So having some community champions, which I'll talk about, local restaurants participating and giving this messaging as well, pediatrician training, local cable access TV, we had people kind of talking about the initiative, community physical activity resource guide, and events where it was kind of a community 5K, different events that got people moving. So you have at the home, at the level of the home and the family. You have in the school, so child, teachers, administrators, and staff. You have community and after school programs. And we also targeted here different ethnic groups because that was a factor here. You have the healthcare system, local government, and the media on board. So we're looking at each of those concentric circles and you're saying, what can we do at each level to build a supportive environment in which these behaviors that we want them to do can happen. So here's just some pictures of the school and after school components, the kids kind of juicing some oranges. We have some school gardens where possible, some active after school activities, skills development with the food service personnel, also doing things like buying some nice sharp knives to cut up the fresh fruits and vegetables we wanted them to be offering. Experiential learning for the kids, doing taste tests and having them vote on, okay, we're gonna add some new recipes to the school food menu, like bean burritos, we had them choose. So it wasn't just this is happening to you, here's a taste test of some options, you vote on which one you want to add to the menu. So really involving the kids as well. Demonstrations by local kind of celebrity chefs would come and do, okay, here's how you do a stir fry, it was really cool, it was an event, and it was fun, and now they're eating a big bowl full of vegetables and some lean protein. The walking school bus, so this was, again, not feasible in all communities, but they had these bright colored hats, they would have parents take turns leading the kids, they would go house to house, pick up the kids, and they're walking together to make it safe. Local champions, so this was the Mayor Crittone. He was really a champion of this, and that's really probably a big factor of why it was successful. So here he's reading to the kids, he went to the classrooms, talked about physical activity and nutrition. Teachers signed on as role models, school committee members. Restaurants, so restaurants could apply to be Shape Up Somerville approved. which meant they were having lower fat offerings, higher fiber. They tagged different item menus that were kind of meeting the standards for the overall initiative. And you have the mayor here. The mayor got a lot of play in this too, and so this is him again. He was, as a result of this initiative, he was invited to the White House for the First Lady's Let's Move launch. So the Let's Move initiative is based partially on this community approach. So this program that was done in Somerville was used as kind of a model for the larger kind of nationwide initiative. So I want to point out too, so nowhere here have I talked about dieting, right? I think that's really, really important message. We're talking about healthy behaviors, taking care of your body, improving your nutrition, moving, being more active, taking part in these community things. We're not talking about losing weight. So kids are growing, they should be gaining weight. We don't want them to lose weight. What we want to do is, so say you have a child, this is a BMI percent, this is a growth chart. So BMI percentiles, anyone who has kids is familiar with this. So as kids grow and get older, they should be gaining weight, but it should be kind of on a nice healthy trajectory. So you have here, they're losing, so they're these nice pudgy 2-year-olds, they're losing weight, kind of around kindergarten, they start to be skinny, and then they have this adiposity rebound where their BMI percentile is actually going up, their weight is going up. So we want them to stay on this curve. What we don't want, and what we're seeing with this obesity epidemic, is kids going here, they're tracking along nicely, and all of a sudden they jump, right? At their next doctor's visit, they're up here instead of tracking along here. So what we want to do is just kind of change the trajectory of weight gain. So instead of kind of having excess weight gain, they're gaining weight appropriately for their age and their gender. So this is a growth chart for girls. So we really want to kind of point that out because you can go the other direction. We don't want to have these messages about, nothing's about your body image, nothing's about losing weight or about fat and being fat. It's about being healthy and strong. And those are really the messages that were supported. And this is, by the way, the evidence-based chart. It's color coding. Most of you see in black and white. So this, for parents, really shows them. So green is where you want to be. Blue here is underweight. Yellow is the overweight range. And above this, 95th percentile for age is the obese category. And so this is where we're seeing, so a third of our kids are in either the yellow or the red right now. So we're trying to get kids to just kind of change that trajectory. So here are the results. This was a 2-year program that was run inside. It's actually still continuing, but the data collection period was 2 years. So the solid bar is the intervention. This is Somerville, so the intervention community, and we have the 2 control communities where we're collecting data on them, but we weren't doing any kind of programming or intervention. This was just business as usual in those communities. So here you have the community 1 here, community 2 here, and this is if you put all the data from the 2 communities together as a comparison. So you can see over time, Somerville, this is a summer weight gain. The program wasn't happening in the summer. Over time, the Somerville community actually, this is their BMI Z-score, which is the standard deviation away from the mean BMI. So over time, kids in Somerville went down, and over time, kids in the control communities as a whole went up. Both communities saw this jump in the summertime, which is a whole other talk. So what's happening in the summer, but this is when the active programming wasn't going on. So you can see it did have an impact. So how does this translate? So here's a chart that just shows basically for boys and for girls, this is a hypothetical without the intervention, so the control communities, and then with the intervention, so those who were in the Somerville program. For boys and for girls, this program prevented close to a pound of excess weight gain. So kids in the control communities were gaining extra pounds that they shouldn't be. They should be gaining appropriately, but they were gaining more than they should appropriate for their age. So that was prevented in these communities. You say a pound is not much, right? But think about having an extra pound of weight gain or 2 pounds of weight gain every single year. So this is early in elementary school. Every single year, and that's compounded as you get older because Paul showed the slide of how activity declines as kids get older. So it actually kind of picks up the pace as far as weight gain. So if you're preventing that from happening, you're changing the trajectory from this way to kind of the nice, healthy weight gain that we want to see. So this was seen as very effective. This was pretty revolutionary research. No one has really shown this before. And again, this was used, highlighted as a model that national Let's Move program was built on. So in summary, so schools, you are uniquely positioned to impact childhood obesity. You have a role, you have a voice, You have a very powerful voice, and kids listen to you, and they spend half their time in schools. We need these multifactorial approaches. So it can get complicated. It's a complicated issue, but we can boil it down and simplify the message, and that's what's been shown to work. And then there's resources available. So we just need coordination of those resources, maybe marketing of those resources that are available, and we need champions. So I guess probably everyone in this room, by virtue of you being here, deciding to come up today, are candidates to be a champion of these causes. So, and it can be simple. So just just consistent messaging, pick maybe one thing to focus on. Once that is kind of ingrained and institutionalized, pick another thing to focus on. But it can be done. And we're seeing some small changes now. Hopefully that's a trend and not just kind of a fluke in the data. But it's largely due to kind of this multi-faceted approach and looking at these different factors and how they impact behavior. So I'm going to stop there because I would love to take questions. I like when it's a small group. A packed house is nice too, but I like when it's kind of more intimate. So I would love to have a discussion around this of what you think and barriers. I know all about the barriers. So if you think of things that even brainstorming, this is a great idea, but what about this? I'm happy to talk about that too. So any questions?
Well, we have in our district, we teach at the elementary level, and our entire school has free breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's great.
good, bring it up all the time.
Right.
Yeah, because
But
what
listen
they're
to what
being
we
served
feed them.
are, the Trixie yogurt, the donut,
Otis Spunkmeyer muffins.
Yeah.
Oh.
290 calories in them.
So it's just like, it's nice that they're qualifying for a free breakfast, but at the same time they're being fed, crap.
Many
that
of the kids
isn't
could be given better food at home. They're not
Right,
all low
exactly.
income,
Yeah.
Oh, but there's enough low income that everybody
Well,
qualifies.
Oh, everybody gets it.
Yeah.
Everybody does, so.
And then there's been, the discussion about teachers saying, it's just not enough food to feed my kids, and so she gives them like seconds.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Or maybe it's just not satisfying because it's
right,
highly processed,
sugar,
high
carbs,
sugar.
so
Yeah.
it's not keeping them full, and they're starving an hour later. But
Right.
it's just
And
tough when
also,
they're
like,
being fed.
What the state says we have to give the kids at lunchtime, the state says one of the options is a hot dog, or
Well, it has to be a protein, right? It doesn't have to be a hot dog.
Right.
But that's kind of what's feasible, yeah. So what would it take to change? Do you talk to this food service?
Yeah.
he does a lot. It's Brian Nolan, he's our
Right.
food service guy, he does a lot, but
He feels strapped, like his hands are tied.
money.
He
is
gets
the-
this amount of money,
Yeah.
and this is what is available for that amount of money.
Like, we get a salad bar twice a year.
Yeah.
Twice a year, we get one in the spring.
And it's
one
a
in
huge
the-
hit.
just-
They love it.
They love it. It's a little germy, but
Yeah, yeah.
other than that, they
Food
love
safety
it.
is another thing, but we can't worry about
We
that.
can't worry about it.
Um,
It's on the whole school's throat.
yeah, so and then it could be accepted, so they could have fresh fruit for breakfast and it would be
And
acceptable to
they
kids. It's
have
just,
to take a fresh fruit
right,
for lunch.
For lunch.
They absolutely, the
Right.
girls will say, you have to take an apple or banana.
But it ends up in the garbage.
But it ends up in the garbage,
Right.
so now we have all this waste. And the people that are in the cafeteria aren't necessarily either, I don't know, enforcing, agreeing, or want to have to take the energy that it needs to make the children either stick that apple in your backpack and bring it home.
Yeah.
Don't throw it in the
Right.
garbage.
So there's two issues here. So one of them I think is maybe kind of working, so it sounds like your food service is amenable to possibly changing, but there's budgetary constraints. So looking at maybe resources in the community that are available. So you're in Cohoes.
Mm-hmm.
So the Capital District Community Gardens are based in Troy.
Okay.
Not that far away. So looking at maybe a possibility there of kind of bringing in maybe just fresh fruit for breakfast. So just starting the conversation, which there are community resources. There's like little kind of buckets of things happening everywhere, but there's no crosstalk and no one knows that they're going on. So it's part of this initiative that I'm doing with the pediatric offices, one of which is in Troy actually, is to kind of let people know that these things are possible, they're available, you just have to kind of, access them.
Right.
And then the second thing is maybe just a little bit of marketing of why apples are good, why fruit is good for you. Not kind of the preachy, like it's going to prevent disease, obviously, but kind of at their level. Because that was one thing that really impacted the Shape Up Somerville program is that just the healthy marketing. So why are we having fruits and vegetables? What do? They make you stronger. You know, the age-appropriate messaging, because that's marketing, right? Kids respond to marketing very well. So kind of just, and I don't know who that would be in your school, but having maybe somebody who's kind of a champion that's promoting, you know, the healthy foods that you see being thrown out, you know, kind of, that's a place to start. So that's kind of the
Well,
first
one of
thing.
the great things, we have Seal Smile, they come to our school district, only on the elementary, I don't think they do middle school and high school. But one of the things they do is bring in a soda bottle, an empty soda bottle, and have it filled a quart, like appropriate amount of sugar.
Sugar.
Yeah,
Yep.
the sugar.
So they
Yeah,
can
those
show,
visuals are
you know,
great.
the visuals
Yeah.
are really good.
Yeah.
You know, and as we were just sitting here talking, I'm thinking, gosh, that would be great to just have
all the time.
school,
Mhm.
just to, you
Yep.
know.
Yeah.
A bulletin board, which is,
Yeah.
yeah, in the cafeteria,
I,
yeah.
when I first started, I actually bought from one of our catalogs all nutritional stuff, like all, like for the bulletin board. But then, you know, I had to change it out or whatever, so, but, yeah.
Are you elementary?
I'm elementary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Two
So
different ones.
which elementary school?
Harmony Hill.
Okay, so I know your principal is very progressive as far as nutrition and health, because I've worked with him before. So I would kind of just, you know, float some ideas, and if you need support, kind of what messages, we have an army full of nutrition graduate
Try and
students.
type
Oh,
Down the road at
cool.
Sage, they could help with that. They
Sage
part-
is at our school all the time.
Yeah, I've been there before. Probably because Mark Perry is so amenable to kind of bringing in. So he's a great example of a champion that could really push this. And then things are going so great at Harmony Hill, the other schools maybe get worried and get jealous.
Yeah,
and
we're
everyone
not
wants a little competition. Healthy competition is always good. Yeah, that's kind of where I would start with that. And resource, you know, tap into the resources. Sage is a resource for you. You know, our students, they have to do part of their trainings. They have to be in the community doing things. So, that's the other slide. I wanted to.
And physical, I'm going to speak on behalf of physical education, because nutrition, just as important, we don't even meet the state mandate for phys ed minutes.
Yeah.
And then their recess might be 10 minutes.
I was just saying that we have a kindergarten class, they get 5 minutes outside.
Yeah.
Literally 5 minutes.
Right.
And I know.
Recess for
this
kindergarten
one,
depends on their teacher.
Yeah.
It's in their lunch, oh, and
Should
that's
run
part of their
different
lunch,
teams.
their 30-minute lunch is 10 minutes outside.
Does your wellness policy speak to this at all?
The,
We do have a wellness committee. It meets basically periodically, typically once a year. I'm on the committee as administrator, but I don't chair the committee. Like with all budgets are tight. Trying to get large groups of people together, very difficult. You know,
it's not a priority.
they mentioned food service. Mike Nolan is there. Brian Nolan's a great guy. Tries the best he can, and basically our food service tries to operate at no cost to the district, which ties his hand because a lot of his funding is based on we're on 60% free reduced lunch throughout the whole entire district. So he feels his choices are limited. Sometimes he tries to change it up, but you know, we see it at the high school, we see it at the middle school, even elementary schools will have carrots out, apples out. Kids just walk right by it. Even if they, you know, the food service encourages them to put them on, then they end up in the garbage. So it's a juggle on that. It's a juggle on that.
Stop, they're throwing away their.
But there's been a lot of lengthy discussions, though, I will say it, central office with, you know, food service and a lot of the administrative cabinet about how we can improve the lunches, but it's, you know.
But then you need that second step of kids actually eating the improvements.
Exactly.
The
But you
lunches,
know
yeah.
what, like, you have children, I have children, if you put it on their plate, it takes them 10 times to finally try.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So even though they're
Kids
throwing it
will
away, you don't stop trying. You
Right.
keep putting it on their plate, and eventually they will.
Eventually, when they're in college. No, but I think that messaging and role modeling and just kind of marketing those healthy foods, not just offering them, because it doesn't really change much in their environment. Okay, it's there now. I'm just going to keep doing what I used to do. So, kind of, you know, just building in some education wherever possible. I know it's tight, but and starting young. The younger you get, the more.
I'm gonna send down that 521. I can download it,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really the Let's Move, Let's Go thing is trademarked, but the 5210 is freely available.
Okay.
And they have actually things you can order, you know, posters and things like that.
Okay, good.
So, and this is my contact information. If you have questions or if you want students to kind of come in to your classrooms or you need help putting together marketing messaging or something, you want to do a bulletin board, I'm happy to help, and my graduate students are happy to help too. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Let's we'll take 5 and then